there, my name is Jess, and this is my channel, Jess Plays Apart, where I talk about books, writing, reading. Books and reading are kind of the same thing. Theater, video games, pretty much anything I want. Today, I am going to do my first book review. These are going to be all of the books I read in the first quarter of 2025. So if you see Q1 and you're like, what the heck is that? That's what that means. That means quarter one. So anything that I read between January 1st and March 31st will be included in this video, as well as anything I did not finish. Also, if I have the physical book, I will put that behind me. Most of these were libraries holds through Libby or an equivalent app. So you're gonna get pictures somewhere. Here, maybe here. I don't know. I will figure it out in post. And also, I have my little tablet. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading my notes. Because I'm not memorizing all that, even though I'm an actor. Anyway, so the first book I read this year is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a young adult historical fiction novel. It takes place in 1939 as a certain party was coming to power. I hope you understand what I mean, given the year. I don't want to get flagged on my first ever book review. This follows a young girl named Liesel. She is an orphan, and she picks up a book that is left by her brother's graveside. That's kind of where we meet her at the beginning of the story. So that action of taking that book from the graveside begins her book thievery, as well as triggers her love affair with books and the power of words. She learns to read from her foster father and ends up reading this one book over and over and over again, because that's the only book that they had in the home at that point, until she's given another book for Christmas, and then she reads that book over and over and over again. Then at kind of the climax of the story, her adopted family harbors a Jewish man who is trying not to be discovered by the party that has now taken over at this point. The story primarily focuses on Liesel, but it also brings in several other characters, such as her foster parents, the kids in her neighborhood that she goes to school with, the Jewish man that becomes part of their household, and how their affiliation or lack thereof with the rising party influences her perspective. Something I really like about this book is how the narrator is Death. It's written from Death's perspective, and this character of Death often will insert their own commentary on what's happening, or they'll clue the reader in on what's going to happen to certain characters. So that's something that I really, really enjoyed about this book. It was just such an interesting take, but it also makes sense given the time frame that it's set in. My one qualm with this book is that it is super long. It's like 400, almost 500 pages, which for a young adult novel, I feel like that's really big. But regardless, I devoured this book and I was sobbing by the end of it. I think I did read this book before when I was either in middle school or high school. I don't know for sure when I read it, but I know I did read it at one point. I highly, highly recommend it if you haven't read it, or if it's been a really long time since you've read it. It's a really, really wonderful book, and I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. The next book I read was The Midnight Library by Haig. I apologize if I get these names wrong. Please correct me so I know in the future. Thank you. Midnight Library is contemporary fiction. It also kind of delves into the magical realism kind of genre. Our main character, Nora, who is deeply unhappy to start with, has a night where so many things go wrong that she ultimately decides that it's not worth being here and decides to take her own life. In this attempt, she ends up between life and death, which is represented by a library where it's always midnight. And this specific library is under the care of Nora's old school librarian that she had when she was a child. And the books in this library contain every possible outcome that her life could have had. So if she had taken a different job instead of the job that she had, there would be a book about that. Or if she adopted a dog instead of a cat, there would be a book about that. So it's just thousands and thousands of books of the thousands and thousands of different opportunities that she could have taken. And then by opening one of these books, she actually goes back into that life and gets to experience it for a bit. I love the concept of this book. I love the concept of being able to visit different timelines. However, I didn't really enjoy this book as much as I wanted to. There's been a lot of discourse about how the author has decided to describe depression and mental illness, and how a lot of people feel that it's not very accurate. In addition, the main point of the book was a bit trite, and I didn't quite care for the writing style most of the time. I probably wouldn't read it again, but that's just my opinion. You may end up loving it. That's my kind of 2 cents on it, and I gave it 3 stars out of 5. The next book I read was nonfiction, and I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is her first autobiography. It explores her life from the ages of 3 to 17, starting with being raised by her grandmother in the South along with her brother, and ending when she has given birth to her first child. I don't read too many biographies, let alone autobiographies. However, this is probably the best one I've read so far. The way she writes has a lot of imagery, and it's not just like, I did this, and then this happened, and then that happened. She really dives into exactly how she's feeling with a lot of imagery to help you kind of be there in that moment with her, which is not very typical for a lot of autobiographies. So I give this 4 stars out of 5. Next is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This is young adult contemporary fiction. It follows 2 teenagers living in New York City. Natasha is an illegal immigrant from Jamaica. She learns that her family is being deported, and she is trying to find an immigration lawyer to help her stay in the country that she has lived the majority of her life in. And Daniel is a first-generation Korean American who is in the city for a college admissions review that he doesn't want to do but is doing for the sake of his parents. They meet and they spend the next several hours of their day together, trekking all across the city before their respective appointments, which, spoiler, kind of, not really, because I feel like it's in the summary. That appointment is with the same person. I absolutely loved this book. It reads so quickly, and every other chapter is written from each character's perspective, so it will flip back and forth between Daniel and Natasha, and so you'll see like the same situations from both of their perspectives, which I love that. Yeah, so it's a very, very fast read, and it keeps you engaged with that writing. The story focuses on the concept of identity, particularly that of immigrants and first-generation Americans, and how they are trying to find their own identity rather than just being immigrant or just being first-generation American, and exploring your own interests, which that's something that everybody can relate to. But I really, I don't really have anything else to say. Even though I don't typically like books written in present tense, I know it's a whole thing, this book is one where I can look past it. That's really rare. So if you see a high rating for me and it's a book written in present tense, you know it's good. So this is 5-star read for me. Next up is Going Bicoastal by Dahlia Adler. This is another young adult contemporary fiction. Our main character, Nicola, has a choice of spending her summer either in New York City with her father or staying with her basically kind of sort of estranged mother in LA. The book then takes us through the alternate universes, flipping back and forth between each scenario, and goes through the entire summer through jobs and romances and figuring out what she wants to do with her career. And it also has a choose your own adventure style ending. I love the concept. I love the different timeline thing. You see a theme here. It's cute, and there's some good bisexual representation as well as Jewish representation, where neither of those things are a point of conflict. However, the writing style was a little kind of bland for me. And again, it's also written in present tense, so that automatically docked it in my book. I'm sorry. So this is a 3-star read for me. Next is another nonfiction book. This is When Broadway Was Black, the triumphant story of the all-black musical that changed the world by Caseen Gaines. This is the story of Shuffle Along, which was the first all-black musical to premiere on Broadway in 1921. If you are a theater person, I definitely recommend reading this. You not only learn about how this musical kind of came together and the immediate reception of it, what happened to the success of the composers and playwrights and even some of the stars of the show. You'll see some of the legends of theater getting their start through Shuffle Along, like Josephine Baker. It also really pointed out how Harlem influenced the music and dance styles of Broadway and how that then extended to the rest of the world. And also how it kind of paved the way for shows today, such as Hamilton. So again, if you're a theater person, you absolutely need to read this book, and I give it 4 stars. And the final book of the quarter for me was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I'm guessing the pronunciation on that. This is actually one I own. I made it a point to buy and read more banned books this year and challenge books this year. So I'm trying to buy more classic literature like this. So this is considered classic literature. It is dystopian science fiction. It was written in 1932 and depicts a future society in which genetic engineering is used to populate the classes. The higher class embryos contain specific chemicals to make them stronger, smarter, more attractive, etc., while the lower class embryos are given chemicals to induce the opposite effect or make them more apt to very specific positions, like the lower class citizens would be put into labor positions. In this world, the classes are taught through schooling and subliminal messaging, the rules of their society, as well as their hierarchy of the social classes. Everything is very regimented and scheduled, and there is often a lot of drug use involved in order to keep everyone happy and satisfied and to completely drown out any type of discomfort. 2 of the alphas, which are the highest level of the society, go on an excursion to visit a savage reservation to see how society used to live before all of this genetic engineering took place. And they end up bringing back 2 of the residents to show the rest of the world states. And it then kind of just follows the juxtaposition of the savages, as they're called, being brought into this place and just completely not understanding a single thing. And of course, in any dystopian science fiction kind of thing, people die, for lack of a better way to put that. Even though this was written in 1932, it's shocking how many elements of the story are so close to becoming reality right now. I mean, we already have done a lot of experimentation with genetic engineering for good and for bad. Yeah, it was scary, but it was really good. It was a really good read. A lot of people say it's a good counterpart to 1984, another kind of dystopian novel. I can't say anything to that because I have not read 1984. So I will get back to you once I read that. I give this one 4 stars. So I did not finish one book this quarter. That book was The Wager, A Tale of Shipwreck, Mutiny, and Murder by David Grann. This is a nonfiction true crime book about a mutiny on the high seas. I enjoyed what I did read of it. The only reason I did not finish it was because it was another library hold, and it would not allow me to extend my hold or renew my hold because a lot of people wanted to read it and I could not finish it in time, so I had to relinquish my hold on it. But I will hopefully get to revisit it later this year when I have more time to sit through a big nonfiction book about mutiny. So that wraps up my first quarter of reading for the year. I would love to know if you read any of the same books, if any of them are on your TBR, if you have books that you want to suggest to me that are specifically in the banned or challenged kind of genre. Please let me know. I will add them to my ever-growing list. I plan on doing these every quarter, so my quarter 2 review will most likely be completed either in July or August, just depending on how much I read and what kind of time I have at that point. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, give me a follow, subscribe, all of the things. I also post all of my streaming videos on here, so if you are into video games, go ahead and follow for that too. I am also on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitch at jessplaysapart everywhere. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!